conversations. And specifically, this is a very interesting afternoon. Ang ating paksa ay vaccination. No? Vaccination Conversations ang ating tawag sa hapong ito. And I'm sure we are all very, very interested in this. We all have our stories to tell. And for me, this is both a learning and conversion experience every time we come together as members of Sangguniang Laiko ng Pilipinas. So mag-umpisa po tayo ngayon with Brother Teddy Santiago.
Espiritu Santo. Amen. Ang mahal, maraming salamat sa pagbigay sa bawat isa ng lakas ng katawan, lakas ng pag-iisip upang maging karapat-dapat kami sa aming mga misyon para sa iyong simbahan. Ama, patawad po sa aming mga pagkukulang, sa aming kahinaan, sa mga sandaling nasasaktan namin ang iyong kalooban. Patawad po. Ama, sa pagkakataong ito, maraming pong salamat na niloob mo na kami makapagsama-sama upang mapag-usapan ng isang bagay na malaki ang maitutulong para sa aming kawan bilang mga mananampalataya. Kaya tinihiling po namin sa iyo, ipadala sa amin ang banal mong Espiritu upang ang bawat isa ay magabayan at makapaggabay din kami pagkatapos nito para sa lalong ikadadakila ng banal mong pangalan. Basta rin Panginoon ang aming naanyayahan tagapagsalita sa hapon ito upang mabigyan kami ng mga kapaliwanagan. Wala po kami magagawa kung wala ka. Ikaw din po ang may akda ng siyensya na aming pag-aaralan sa hapon ito. Ang lahat mong ito ay tinataas namin sa iyo sa pamamagitan ni Kristo ang aming Panginoon na nabubuhay at naghahari kasama at ng Espiritu Santo magpasawalang hanggan. Amen. Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Amen.
Amen. Maraming salamat. At yun po ang ating opening prayer. At ngayon naman po sa ating panimula for our opening message, ang talagang walang pagod na kasama natin, kalakbay natin dito sa LAIKO at nabibless tayo dahil tuwing umaga, suki tayo sa pagpapanood sa kanyang First Things First. Let's all welcome Bishop Broderick Pabilio.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Salamat uli sa LAIKO sa pag-organize nitong ating conversation. At salamat po kay Fr Nic at kay Dr. Rene sa pagtanggap po na sila'y tagapagsalita natin. Ngayon po yung pag-uusapan po natin ay hindi na lang theory. Noon po pinag-uusapan yung vaccine, pero parang malayo pa sa atin. Ngayon ay nandito na. Dumating na yung vaccine. Hindi pa nga, kukunti pa lang pero dumating na. Kaya ito'y talagang nasa atin na. Kaya sana makita po natin ang kahalagahan nito. Pero may dalawang problema po tayo. Ang isang problema ay konti pa yung confidence ng mga tao. No, bilang mga leaders, sana mapag-usapan natin at paano natin mapalakas itong confidence ng mga tao sa vaccine. Lalong-lalo na ngayon na for a few days now, we have been experiencing a surge dito sa Pilipinas. Umabot na naman tayong 3,000 a day. At may mga balita na ibang mga ospital ay napupuno na naman ang kanilang mga ward para sa COVID-19. So, at saka mayroon pang mga bagong strain na dumadating sa atin. So, yan po ay dapat ikababahala natin. Talaga ba yung vaccine ang solution dyan? Let us try to know and be convinced. And hopefully, we can spread the news later on to others. So, yan po ang kuha natin dito. Pag-uusapan natin bilang mga leader LAIKO, tayo sana ay maging influencer din at mabuting influencer sa ating mga kababayan. So welcome po sa inyong interest at marami pa sigurong makakapanood nitong ating pag-uusapan sa pamagitan ng ating mga Facebook. Kaya welcome and let us praise the Lord for the opportunity that we can talk about this together.
Maraming salamat po, Bishop. At ang magpapakilala ng ating main speaker for today, Brother June Cruz.
Magandang hapon po. Hindi po akong main speaker ngayong hapon ito.
Magpapakilala.
Ako po magpapakilala ng ating speaker sa hapon ito. At isang karangalan po na makasama natin ngayon, isang Filipino-American Dominican priest. Siya po ngayon ay nasa Rhode Island, USA, alauna po ng umaga ngayon doon. Kaya po talagang malaking utang na loob natin na talagang pinagbibigyan po tayo upang mabigyan tayo ng mga updates. And ang ating pong tagapagsalita, okay, is a doctor of molecular biology and at the same time a doctor of moral theology at may sarili pong laboratorio sa US na ngayon po ay patuloy din ang paggawa ng research. Kaya magiging interesting, mayaman o kumisay baka nakakatakot ang mga ibibigay sa ating mga update. Pero mabuti po we hear it from the experts themselves. And therefore, it is our honor to have Dr. Fr Nic Austriaco, OP, who is right now in the Rhode Island, USA. Magandang umaga po sa inyo. Welcome and thank you in advance.
Thank you so much, Sir June, for the kind invitation to speak at the LAIKO Conversations today. And I hope it is well in the afternoon in the Philippines. So I'm going to share my screen. So this afternoon, I would like to give you a brief update on the pandemic and the vaccine rollout in the Philippines. I'm going to begin by reinforcing what the bishop just mentioned. We are beginning the second surge of COVID-19 in the Philippines. And so what I would like to do is to show you the information and the data for that and what we can expect in the next month or so. I will then focus on the vaccine rollout in the Philippines. We will focus on the vaccines that have arrived, the vaccines that we are still waiting for, as well as a comparison of these vaccines so that you and our other kababayans will understand the complexities of the decision that each of us has to make for ourselves, for our families, and for our country. So we'll begin with the pandemic update. So this is called a pandemic curve, and this is the pandemic curve that was published on March 5th by the Department of Health on their website. So let me tell you what you are looking at. So on the upper left-hand corner, you can see the total number of cases in the Philippines. And so we are at 587,704. To give you a comparison, in the United States, which is 3 times larger than the Philippines, the number of cases is about 29 million. So just to give you a sense of the enormous difference and the impact of the COVID-19 on these two countries. So in the graph below, on the vertical axis, you see the number of cases per week. And each of these bars is the number of weeks over the last year. So what you can see is at the beginning of the pandemic, a year ago, we went into lockdown and you see the cases were low. And we basically experienced a surge in June and July, which if you remember, triggered in Metro Manila an MECQ when our hospitals began to be overwhelmed. And so this has, by the grace of God, this has decreased over the last many months. As you can see, there is a slight increase over after Christmas. This is because of cases in Region 7 in Cebu City. There are cases in Benguet. There are cases in Mountain Province. But you can see here in the last 2 weeks, there is a rapid increase in the number of cases. Now, the reason why this is the case is because we are experiencing a surge in the NCR. So this is the same curve, but the curve is now just for the NCR. And you can see in the last 2 weeks, we have doubled the number of cases in the NCR. It is a rapid increase. And you can see the rapidity of this increase when you focus on Pasay. So this is the Pasay city. And you can see in Pasay, during the surge in June and July, they have already exceeded that surge. So in the last 2 weeks in Pasay, there is a significant increase in the number of cases. And we now know, because of the information from the Philippine Genome Center, that the reason why there is a surge in Pasay is because of the appearance of 2 variants, the South African variant and the UK variant. And the South African variant is both of these variants are more transmissible. They're easier to pass from one person to another, which is why you see this rapid increase in the number of cases. And this was just, Saturday, March 6th. So this is just this morning's news from yesterday. And what we are now seeing is that the variants have spread throughout Metro Manila. So there are now other LGUs other than Pasay that seem to be experiencing the effect of the South African variant. So what does this mean in the weeks to come? What this means is that a surge has begun in the NCR. And we as a country have to work very hard to prevent this variant from spreading beyond the NCR. Because this variant, as we will see shortly, will have a direct impact on our vaccination strategy over the next year. There are a lot of people who've been asking me what I think will happen in the next few weeks. I think and I hope that the national government will begin to try to control and contain the surge in the NCR. What this will mean is we will have to restrict mobility amongst our people again. And the worst case scenario is we would have to enter into a 2-week lockdown in the same way that we went through in August. That is what we hope will not happen, and we are trying to make sure it will not happen. But the experience of other countries throughout the world, like the United Kingdom, Israel, Portugal, Ireland, has shown that when these variants enter your country and they trigger a surge, it becomes particularly challenging to control them. So we have to, and I'm going to urge you now that we will pray very hard in the next few weeks that the national government and our LGUs will be able to control and contain and eventually to suppress this current surge in the NCR before it spills out to the other regions of our beloved country. We now move to the vaccines, and it's important. I wanted to begin by just sharing the news, even though it is sad news, about the pandemic, because that is the context in which we have to discuss our vaccines. So as of March 5th, so yesterday, these are the number of vaccines that are being developed throughout the world. You can see that 4 of them have been abandoned. So 4 of them have not passed through the appropriate clinical trials, but 6 of them have. And we are grateful to God for these 6 different vaccines. This is a list of the leading vaccines in the world. So the very first 2 are Pfizer and Moderna. These are new technology vaccines. They are mRNA vaccines. These are the vaccines that are being deployed primarily here in the United States. So Gamaleya is the next one. This one is used in Russia. And we have the AstraZeneca from the United Kingdom that arrived in the Philippines 2 days ago. And then we have a series of other different vaccines. So Johnson & Johnson was just approved in the United States last week, and it is now being deployed here in my home state in Rhode Island, I believe as of this morning. And then we have the 2 Chinese vaccines that people talk about, Sinopharm and Sinovac. And Sinovac arrived in the Philippines this past Sunday. And Sinovac has been approved for use in many countries, including, for example, in Indonesia and in Thailand. So I'm going to leave it to Dr. Renee, who is following me, to go into more detail about the vaccine mechanism of action. But for speaking about it simply, one of the things you have to understand is that antibodies destroy SARS-CoV-2. And what the vaccines do primarily is they help our bodies to make these antibodies. And so this is a famous picture of the first person in the world to be vaccinated against COVID-19 outside of a vaccine trial. She's 91 years old, and she is a citizen of the United Kingdom, and she received her vaccine in December. What people don't usually talk about, but it's important to note, is that the nurse who injected her is a Filipina who has spent 20 years working for the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. So there are different vaccines. So the vaccines are delivery systems. So they're going to deliver something like like if you wanted to get Lazada or something like that, you need someone to deliver your package. So there are different delivery systems for these different vaccines. The most famous ones, Pfizer and Moderna, are RNA vaccines. So these are vaccines that carry the information of a part of the virus that carries that information into your body so that your body will learn how to recognize and attack SARS-CoV-2 if SARS-CoV-2 enters your own body. We also talk about so this is Pfizer and Moderna. We also have viral vectors. So viral vectors is, in this particular case, for AstraZeneca, which just arrived in the Philippines 2 days ago, it is a monkey vector that is carrying a gene, the genetic information for one of the parts of the SARS-CoV-2, the COVID-19 vaccine. And then this is the whole virus approach. This whole virus approach is the Sinovac approach, where you take the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that gives you COVID-19, you kill it, you inactivate it, and then you inject that dead virus directly into the patients in order for them to develop antibodies and immune response. And finally, this is the fourth class is a protein subunit delivery system. This is Novavax, which has not yet arrived in the Philippines. So if these are delivery systems, what did they deliver? They deliver the spike protein. So this is a picture of the SARS-CoV-2 COVID-19 virus, and you see its skin is covered with about 75 of these spike proteins that have been colored in red in the picture. And what these vaccines do, and this is what the Pfizer vaccine does, for example, is it takes the spike protein and the information of that spike protein, and it is injected into your body, and your body makes the spike protein, and it generates antibodies against it. Now, people will say, well, how long does the vaccine last in your body? Basically, just a few days. So these are these are some of the comparisons. This is a basic comparison. So on the very top, you have AstraZeneca. You have to take 2 doses of AstraZeneca, and the efficacy is between 62 and 90%. What you're going to see with these different numbers is that these numbers, as we will see in the next slide, measure different things, which is why it's so difficult to compare one vaccine to the other. So the AstraZeneca is about 62 to 90%. And one of the advantages is that it can be stored in a regular refrigerator, in contrast to the Moderna and Pfizer. So the Moderna and Pfizer are about 95% effective, but they require super cold, ultra cold refrigerators. So the Pfizer vaccine at this time requires a refrigerator at minus 70 degrees. This is the temperature in Antarctica during winter. It's that cold. So this is the temperature of the penguins in Antarctica. And then you have Gamaleya, which is the Russian vaccine, which is also expected to arrive in the Philippines in the next few months. Now you notice I put here the image of a fetal human in his mother's womb. And the reason why is that these two particular vaccines, AstraZeneca and Gamaleya, were manufactured using cell lines that were obtained from aborted fetuses many years ago. And we can talk about that in more detail if you have any questions. In summary, what the Vatican has said and what the Catholic bishops of the Philippines have also said, and Catholic bishops all over the world have said, is that because this is a historic evil, this is an evil that happened in the past, we can use these vaccines in order to save lives, as long as we know that they do not lead to future abortions. And we know that because the cell lines that were used to make AstraZeneca and Gamaleya were cell lines that were established many years ago, and they are the standard cell lines that are used everywhere. It's interesting because Johnson & Johnson, that vaccine was just rolled out in the United States this week, and the Catholic bishops of the United States have had to respond to many questions about this issue. Now, this is the Chinese vaccines. The challenge with the Chinese vaccines is that the data reporting the clinical trials have not been published in a journal. So this is reports that we find in the newspapers, which is more difficult for a scientist to evaluate. But the range for Sinovac is between 50% to 91%, depending upon the country that you are testing it in, and Sinopharm is about 78%. So this is, again, to give you what I wanted to do with this particular slide is people look at the numbers, but they do not realize that the numbers are often comparing different things. So, for example, the Pfizer is calculating symptomatic COVID-19 from 7 days after the second dose, while Moderna is counting symptomatic COVID-19 from 14 days after the second dose. So you're comparing two different things. And the AstraZeneca is also symptomatic COVID-19 from 14 days. And you can see that the numbers are different depending upon how long you wait between your first dose and your second dose. So the standard AstraZeneca is 4 to 12 weeks apart, is about 63% efficaciousness. But if you wait longer, like in the United Kingdom now, they have waited longer. It turns out that the vaccine improves the longer you wait between two doses. So there are many different things to compare. And a lot of Filipinos have been asking me, they've been texting me, they've been asking, which is the best vaccine? And I say the best vaccine is the vaccine that you have in front of you right now. You know, if you're walking along the street and they say, someone comes up to you and say, would you like a car? Here is a Toyota. And I say, look, if you're walking, a Toyota is better than walking. Maybe next year you can buy a BMW. So right now, what we're facing is that there is an extreme shortage of vaccines in the world. So the choice of vaccines will be a challenge for us, especially in the Philippines. Even here in the United States, as I will mention shortly, I was vaccinated with the Moderna vaccine. It was the only vaccine that was offered to me. I could not choose. So for those of you who are asking, which vaccine should I take? You should receive the first vaccine that is offered to you, because any protection is better than no protection. And that's something that I need to stress over and over again. Now, this is the data for the South African and the UK variant. So as I pointed out just 2 days ago, we have reports of these two variants in the NCR. And what you can see is that some of these variants do not affect the efficacy of the vaccine. So with Novavax, the efficacy is around 90%. But you notice against the South African variant, the Novavax vaccine drops in efficacy. The same thing with the Johnson & Johnson. It goes from 72 to 57. The reason why there is a question mark here is because for AstraZeneca, the data has not been published yet, but they have provided information. So there's a South African university that looked at 2,000 volunteers between the age of 18 and 59. And what they showed is that there's a dramatic decrease in efficacy for AstraZeneca for mild and moderate disease from 62% to 10%. And so, when people are asking between Sinovac and AstraZeneca today, one of the questions that I point out is, again, it's really hard for me to tell you one versus the other. Receive the vaccine that is made available to you. We do not know what the future has in store. Only our Lord does. And so we have to move forward in hope and trust. And these companies are also developing booster shots. So in case you need a booster or an extra shot against the South African variant, this will become available to us later this year. So in terms of the safety of the vaccines, so this is from this morning, 291 million people have been vaccinated around the world as of this morning. And I was so excited to see that the Philippines is finally on this map. So for many, many weeks, I would look at this map every few days, and the Philippines is not there yet. Now, we are still very low. So a lot of people are asking, when will we see the effect of the vaccine on the pandemic? Well, if you look at the experience of Israel, they have to vaccinate 50% of a population before you see any effects. For the NCR, the population of the NCR is about 13 million, which means that if we want to see we will not see any effects of the vaccination campaign in the NCR until at least several million have been vaccinated. And I have to say this because people are believing now that the vaccines have started in the Philippines, magically the pandemic will end. That is not the case. It takes time for people to develop immunity. So it takes you 2 weeks after the second dose before you are fully vaccinated. That is 6 weeks after the first dose of Moderna. So it takes you many, many weeks, nearly a month and a half to develop the immunity. And we need about 50 in Israel, they needed 50% of a population. So in their case, they've inoculated nearly 100% of all their seniors. So all their lolos and lolas have been vaccinated, and they only saw a drop in infections of their lolos and lolas after about 2 weeks after 50% of their lolos and lolas were vaccinated. So this will give us a sense of when we will expect some effect of the vaccines on the pandemic in the Philippines. So this is a picture of me receiving my vaccination a week ago, the second dose of Moderna. And these are some of the side effects. pain at the injection site, headache, fever, fatigue, chills, muscle pain. And I can tell you it was a very rough next day. So the day after my second dose, I had fever. I was so tired. I felt like I was hit by a truck. The chills, I had chills for several hours in the afternoon, and every muscle in my body was painful. So I basically went to bed for the whole day. I said the Holy Mass. It was really the only thing of significance that day, to say the Holy Mass and to pray. I went back to bed. The next day, wala na. So that we have to tell our kababayans, after the second dose of the vaccine, between about 12 hours and 36 hours, some of us will have very difficult reactions. Now, it turned out, so in my community of Dominican priests, there were 40 of us who were vaccinated at the same time. All the Lolo priests had no side effects. It were the younger ones. If you were 55 and younger, and the younger you were, the more difficult the side effects. But the Lolos were like, why is everyone not coming to prayer? I said, well, all the younger priests are in bed because of the side effects. So the older you are, the less chance you will have side effects. The younger you are, the more challenging the side effects will be, but they only last from 12 to 36 hours. And people have said, well, how bad was it? I said, it was challenging, but I am sure it was not as bad as being in the ICU with a ventilator down my throat for 3 weeks. And I said, nothing can compare to the experience of those who are hospitalized for that. And we are vaccinated to protect ourselves and our loved ones. So the side effects are a good sign that the vaccine is working, and they will pass after 24 to 46 hours. Mine was about 36 hours, and after 36 hours, the side effects were completely gone. So people are also worried about severe allergic reactions. This is called anaphylactic shock. And in the United States, for the first 4 million people who were vaccinated with Moderna, 10 of them had anaphylactic shock. So it's very rare. And if this is a table of the 10 individuals who were vaccinated, and many, if not most of them, had history of anaphylactic shock. And so this is why if you look at the guidelines of the Department of Health of the Philippines, every vaccine center in the Philippines will have this EpiPen. So this is an EpiPen. This is epinephrine. This is and Dr. Rene can expound on this much more because he's a medical physician. But the EpiPen is the instrument of choice of reacting to severe allergic reactions. And so what will happen is that when you are vaccinated here and in the Philippines, they will watch you for 15 minutes to make sure there is no allergic reaction. And for those people who have a higher risk of allergies, they will watch you for 30 minutes to make sure that you do not have an allergic reaction. So when will the COVID-19? First thing I have to remind people is there is a severe shortage of vaccines in the world. So the reason why it has been so challenging to get the vaccines is because there's not enough. So we are short several billion doses in the world. And the reason is that most of the vaccines were bought by Western countries. So the United States, the European Union, the United Kingdom, and Canada, and then we add Japan, have bought most of the vaccines developed in the West, leaving only 800 million for something like 6 billion people, which is why you will see it is important for the Philippines to expand the vaccine portfolio to include vaccines from China and from Russia, because there's not enough from the rest of the world. And so we will be getting vaccines from all over the world. And as you know, they have arrived. And we thank God for the arrival. This is the arrival of Sinovac from China this past Sunday, and AstraZeneca from the World Health Organization COVAX facility arrived on a KLM flight just 2 days ago. And there are such wonderful pictures of our kababayan healthcare workers receiving their first dose. And this is just what we expect over the next few months. So the COVAX global facility that has arrived. So you see here that they have promised 5 to 9 million doses. We only received about 480,000 doses, but they have begun to arrive. The Pfizer doses should also arrive soon. The Sinovac has begun to arrive. We will also expect over the next few months the Sputnik 5, the Gamaleya from Russia, that is in April, more AstraZeneca in May, Moderna vaccines 20 million in July, Pfizer 15 million in August, Novavax in the third quarter of 2021, and then Johnson & Johnson 5 million in October of 2021. So you can see this is going to be a gradual rollout of the vaccines as they arrive. Now, in terms of vaccine priority, you have seen pictures of our kababayans who work as frontline health workers who are being vaccinated all over our country. And they are the top of the priority list because they are exposed to COVID-19 in their heroic efforts to protect our country against that disease. The second priority is senior citizens. So, Excellency, you will be up in the next batch, the next priority. We have both the indigent senior citizens and the remaining senior citizens. And then what is I find deeply moving in the Philippines, unlike in many Western countries, a priority has been given to the poor. So the poor is in the third priority. Now, what I understand is that there is a shuffling of these categories at the moment because they are trying to match the vaccine to the priority system. So depending upon which vaccines arrive first and the order they arrive, there may be moving up and down of these vaccine categories. Now, I get a question a lot, why should you get vaccinated? To protect yourself, your families, and those around us. And we need to achieve 70% of herd immunity. This is one of the last slides I show. This is what herd immunity looks like. So on the upper left-hand side, the people in red are infected with COVID-19. The people in blue are not protected. And so there is constant contact between the red and the blue. And so the red infects the blue. Now we are targeting a 75% herd immunity. So here you see the yellow are vaccinated, the blue are not. And you see how the red, it's very difficult for the red to find the blue because so many yellows surround the red. And so this is what herd immunity is. Not everyone will be able to be vaccinated because those who are, for example, being treated for cancer with chemotherapy, they will not be allowed to be vaccinated if their immune systems are compromised. So in order to protect them, we need to be protected. And it will be enormous challenges, as I explained to the Bishops' Conference. It is the largest and most complex public health effort in the history of our country. But it is so important because it will benefit the poor and most vulnerable, most significantly among us. To give you a sense, we will have to vaccinate 75 million people, pretty much every single Filipino adult, because these vaccines have not been approved for our children. And since children compose about 30 million of Filipinos, we will have to vaccinate pretty much everybody. We will have to vaccinate most of them twice, which is the challenge because Lolo and Lola will think once they're vaccinated, tapos na, but they don't know they have to come back in 3 weeks. Who is going to bring them back? Who is going to call them? Who is going to knock on their door and bring them back? That is going to be a logistical challenge. And as the Bishop pointed out, as His Excellency pointed out, we still have vaccine hesitancy. There's a lot of vaccine hesitancy. And you can see the logo of the UST UST COVAX Vaccine Awareness Team. This is an interdisciplinary team at UST, and I am the lead investigator of that team, and we're trying to address vaccine hesitancy. So in conclusion, it is a blessing from the Lord that we have these vaccines against COVID-19. And so together as a country, as a people, we must seek to be vaccinated to protect ourselves, our families, and those who are weak and vulnerable around us. And this will be an enormous challenge. And this will be as the song at the beginning of this meeting, this is a mission from the Lord, especially for as we serve the poor and most vulnerable, that we try to speak to them, we try to answer their questions, we accompany them, we walk with them, because they are very scared, and especially those who are not sure about what vaccines do. And it is our privilege to serve those who are weak and vulnerable, especially if we find that we are strong. Thank you so much. I'll be available for questions.
Father Nick, maybe just a quick question on the yeast approach, if you can give us an update, please.
Yes, so I'm in the United States in order to develop a yeast vaccine delivery system for a COVID-19 vaccine for the Philippines. So as of 2 days ago, we have the yeast that contains the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, and I will spend the next few weeks testing this vaccine, and I have a flight back to Manila on the 27th of March, so 3 weeks from now, to return to the Philippines to test this vaccine in animals at UST. Our hope is to develop a vaccine that will be, I would like to give it away free to the poor and those who are vulnerable. But I told the Lord I will do the best science I can do. It is up to Him and the prayers of Mama Mary to accompany this project to see if it will bear much fruit for the Filipino people.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation. We have a question from Emeline Palabrica.
Yes, Father.
Good afternoon, Emeline.
Good afternoon, Father. I am a cancer patient, and I don't know if I heard you right, that cancer patients cannot be vaccinated. Why is that, Father?
No, it's more specifically, you would have to speak to your physician, who would have to determine whether or not, if you as a cancer patient who is undergoing chemotherapy, it depends on your immune system. So because the vaccine is going to stimulate your immune system, and so for some people, if their immune system is not as robust, not as strong, then they may be asked to wait until a future time. So I do not know about your particular case. It's one of those things you must speak to your oncologist about. God bless you, Emmeline.
Thank you, Father.
Father Nick, at the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned something that the vaccine lasts only a few days. Can you clarify if that has to refer to the spike protein or the effectivity of the vaccine?
So, thank you for Sir Mars for that. So the vaccine itself lasts only a few days in your body. We believe that it's effective for what we think will be at least a year. Because the vaccines have only just been deployed, we will have to wait for more information as people become vaccinated and we look at the response of the vaccine. However, we know that people who've been infected by other coronaviruses, so there are other coronaviruses that give us colds, they are able to maintain their immunity for 1 or 2 years, which is why we expect that these vaccines should be effective, hopefully, God willing, for 1 or 2 years. But it's only been a few months, so we are not sure about that. That will have to be confirmed as we move forward.
a follow-up question, Father Nick. For those who have already been affected by COVID-19, right here we have Bishop Abilio, myself. Would we be considered as having antibodies in ourselves? I was tested last week because I was asked to donate plasma. And they said that my titers was 1:64, the highest possible. Is that the equivalent of a vaccine?
So the most recent studies suggest that a natural infection with COVID-19 is 83% efficacious. So what is recommended here in the United States is that COVID-19 positive patients person should also receive the vaccine in time, especially if it has been 90 days since your infection. And the difference between a COVID-19 positive person and someone who has never gotten COVID-19 is that for you and for His Excellency, the first dose of the vaccine will have more side effects than the second dose, because the natural infection is like the first dose. So when you get the first vaccine, it is like a booster shot. And then the second dose, we know of people here now who have had that experience. So in my case, the second dose was more challenging than the first. And that was because I never got infected with COVID-19. But there are people who have been previously affected, and that first dose was really difficult, and the second dose was nothing. So especially at the very beginning of the vaccine campaign, what they're saying is, especially if you're within 90 days of your illness, you have natural immunity. So the vaccine should be prioritized to those who do not have natural immunity first. But the advice is that we should all still be vaccinated because we do not know how long natural immunity takes.
Thank you very much. Bishop?
Yes, Father, I have a question. Since most of the vaccines, except Johnson, will have to take 2 doses, what happens if you take only one and the other was not done?
So thank you for that question, Excellency. We do not know. So we know that if 2 weeks after the first dose of Moderna, you attain 80% protection. So you see, that's all. Even before the second dose, you already are protected. But we do not know, because there were no clinical trials, how long that protection will last, which is why we encourage people to be vaccinated twice. Having said that, you can imagine it is not sayang, So if you get vaccinated once and for some reason Lolo never got the vaccination again, at least for some time, Lolo will be protected against COVID-19. Not the highest efficacy that is possible with a two-shot schedule, but hopefully he's protected enough against severe COVID. Now let me point this out. So the efficacy, the numbers that you see, are for getting COVID. But all of these vaccines are 100% protection against severe COVID. What that means is, even if you get one of these vaccines that has 60% efficacy, you will have 100% protection against the COVID-19 that will put you in the hospital. So you might get sick, you might stay at home for 3 days, but the vaccine, and every vaccine appears to do this, protects you against going to the hospital and dying, which is why, again, it is so important to stress that any vaccine that is made available to you is the best vaccine for you, because it will protect you against hospitalization and death. You may still get COVID, but if you're still only at home for 3 days, you will be fine. Sir Nestor, I see your hand is raised.
Yes.
Father, good afternoon from the Philippines.
Good afternoon po.
I don't know if you have heard about Dr. Teresa Deisher.
I know Teresa very well. We've worked. She's over in Seattle. We
That's
have
right.
worked together, yes.
And Pamela Acker. They've been
Uh-huh.
coming out in the internet regarding the production of the fetal cell lines with regards to the vaccine production. And they said that, especially Pamela Acker said that usually in the production of the vaccine, they use fresh abortuses. And then Teresa Deisher, Dr. Teresa Deisher said that the mRNA has not been used for human beings. And then we still don't know the long-term effects of these vaccines,
So
especially
I,
it's made of mRNA. That's
So
all.
thank you,
Thank you.
thank you for that question. So I will respond this way. So the very first thing is that it is unlikely that fresh aborted fetuses will be used, because in the United States you have to, you are only allowed to use cell lines that have been approved by the FDA, and these are cell lines that have been studied for many years. So it is unlikely that we would use fresh aborted cells. I mean, you would not even know where these cells came from. So that is my response. With regards to the mRNA, people don't realize that the virus itself is an RNA virus. So the RNA, when you get, so when His Excellency the Bishop was infected with SARS-CoV-2, and Mars was infected by SARS-CoV-2, the virus injected its RNA into their cells. And so the vaccine is actually doing exactly what the virus is doing. It's injecting RNA into the cells. And so our bodies are used to dealing with cells that are producing foreign proteins, foreign molecules, foreign viral parts that are encoded by RNA. So yes, in a sense, we do not know the long-term effects of these vaccines because these vaccines were just developed, but we understand enough about mRNA. We understand enough about the RNA that the viruses inject into you to believe that they are safe in the long run. And so when people tell me, well, I do not want RNA in my body, I say, well, every time you get COVID-19, every time you get the flu, these viruses inject their RNA into you. So if you have experienced the flu in your life, then you have been exposed to foreign viral RNA. So the vaccines are just trying to do what the virus has done and what many other viruses have done in millions of people who've been infected by RNA viruses. So hopefully this will give you some perspective. So Teresa is correct. We do not know the long-term effects, but we understand enough about RNA. We understand enough about viral RNA to believe that this is not going to be a significant issue in the years to come, especially since the pressing problem of COVID-19, we do know the radical impact of that pandemic on our lives.
Thank you very much, Father. We do have time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions, so we can give way to our to Doc Rene. Over here in our chat room, Father, there are questions mainly about preconditions. How about those with asthma? And how about seniors taking maintenance medicines for hypertension and diabetes?
So from the experience of the Lolo priests I live with, it was not a problem for them. Their physicians told them to continue to take their maintenance medication for all their underlying and chronic conditions. So they were successfully able to do that. With asthma, again, asthma is not contraindicated by these vaccines at this time. But if someone has a concern, I always say speak to your physician. So I see. So quite unlikely. There's a question: what would happen if a person is vaccinated more than 2 doses? basically, it looks like we're going to be vaccinated pretty much every few years for the rest of our lives. So an extra booster shot is not going to be a problem, in that your body is already going to have the required immunity to do that. And this is the analogy is, so when Sir Mars gets vaccinated twice, it's like he got vaccinated 3 times, because the first infection was a natural infection. And for those who have tested positive before, the second shot was no different than for those of us who were not. Is it recommended that members of a household get vaccinated at the same time? Well, currently, because different members of the household belong to different priority groups, it is unlikely that that is going to happen. But if Lolo and Lola are living together, then it's probably more convenient if Lolo and Lola get vaccinated together, but they're probably not going to get vaccinated with their children, or certainly not with their grandchildren.
We have a raised hand, Father Pancho Hamlig.
Sir, yes?
Sir Pancho, go ahead, please.
Father, there were news that Sinovac was not being recommended for senior citizens. I don't know if that is true, or what's the rationale?
Again, thank you for that question. Again, it's very hard to evaluate the recommendations of the FDA, because they receive the clinical trial information from Sinovac, which has not yet been published. But from their discussion, what they seem to suggest is that not enough individuals were tested in the clinical trial who were in the population group above 65. So the data was insufficient to approve that. Like I said, I hope that the Chinese companies will publish their data soon, so that we can actually examine it ourselves. So thank you, Sir Pancho, for that question.
The final question, Father, here from Paulo, which is what you are reading also, has to do with whether it is okay to wait for a vaccine with a better ethical profile, rather than the current ones available with questionable, probably, ethical profiles.
So, it really depends. It really depends on your particular situation. Here in the United States, some people were given a choice, some people were not given a choice. Different people have different sensitivities to cooperation or with evil. And so I've spoken to people who said, Father, I cannot sleep at night if I'm vaccinated with Johnson & Johnson. And I say, I respect your conscience, and let's wait for another vaccine. There are others who say, Father, even though I am pro-life, I need to take this vaccine because I live with my parents, and one of them has diabetes and the other one has underlying cardiovascular disease. And so I have to, even though I am aware of the moral complexities of the Johnson & Johnson, I think I should take it. And I say, you too are prudent. So each of us is going to have to decide whether or not we can wait. Now, the challenge, of course, is there are no guarantees this year that you will be able to receive the vaccine of your choice. So if someone in the Philippines says, I will wait for Pfizer, Pfizer may not be available to you even when it arrives, because it is deployed for a particular part of the country, or if it is a particular group of people. So you would have to wait for at least a year or a year and a half when the supply of the vaccine becomes plentiful enough that we would be able to choose. For some people, they live in households where this is a reasonable thing, and I support them. For others, especially those, for example, who are working in healthcare, this may be a particular challenge, because if you are a frontliner and you choose to wait, and you are not protected, not only are you may be young, but you may also be endangering your patients. And so there's a concern for the common good there, and these vaccines may not be available for you for many, many months. So you see, it's a very complicated moral discernment that you have to take to prayer. You have to speak to those who are wise, and each of us has to understand that this is a decision that we will make, that we have to be able to sleep with every night, and to speak to the Lord about when we see him face to face.
Wow, that was a really quick bonus on
One more
Bishop.
question. Yes, Father. Right now, the vaccines are for free. But in the future, will it always be for free, or do we have to buy it?
It's likely that in the future, you probably will have to buy it. The government may subsidize it, but you see many of these companies are now selling their vaccines at cost. So it's likely that after and there are many things that they've announced. They say after the pandemic is over, we will then price it differently. So it's likely that in the future, we will have to buy these vaccines separately. One of the reasons why I would like to pursue developing a yeast vaccine delivery system for the Philippines is because such a system would be relatively inexpensive. We're talking about, on the order of less than 100 pesos, because it's basically yeast. You can buy, and we would be able to produce a lot of yeast in the Philippines because there are factories in Laguna that produce yeast for bakers, for pandesal. So we would just ask one of these factories to spend a short time producing the yeast, and then we would have to package them, and we would have to either put them in pills or in powder form, and then we would distribute them around the country. This is my hope and my prayer. You would not need a nurse, you would not need a doctor, you would not need an injection, that you would take. This is an oral vaccine that you would take basically by a pill, which is probably what will happen, or you will put it in your milk, or some people say in their beer.
A final question, Father. What about other options other than vaccines? For example, ivermectin.
So there are novel therapeutics that are being developed, and we're grateful to God for that. And so, some people are saying, well, I will just wait because if I get sick, I could be treated. I can understand that. However, we should try to keep ourselves as healthy as possible. So even though there are therapies available, that's why we are asked to live a healthy life. We are told not to smoke. Even though there's therapy against lung cancer, we should really try to avoid lung cancer. And so in this particular case, the vaccine is an opportunity for us to avoid getting sick. Having said that, if some of us get sick, yes, there are antibody-based as well as immune regulator-based therapeutics that are now appearing, that are being tested in clinical trials. So we're grateful to God for that as well. Now, Sir June is asking me if I'll able to stay. It's already 2:00 in the morning, and I have a meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning. Wow. So I think I'm going to have to go say my night prayers, say good night to the Lord in the tabernacle, and then head to bed. So I apologize for not staying longer. I just need to go to sleep.
Thank you very much, Father. Some final words.
I don't know if there are healthcare workers out there, but if you are a healthcare worker, I want to thank you for your sacrifice for the Filipino people. We are entering a second surge, and it will be rough for the next few weeks. And so, we are going to be praying for your strength. We are going to be praying for your courage as we move forward in this pandemic. It's not over yet, and the next few weeks, especially in the NCR, will be a challenge. However, that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we ask the Lord to guide our president and the members of the IATF, because the next few weeks will be critical. And if we delay too long, the surge will be larger. If we are able to handle it early, the surge will be less. So we have to pray that they will be wise, that they will be courageous, and that they will be willing to serve the Filipino people in this very difficult time.
May we ask your permission, Father, because there are many leaders who are present here to share your presentation in our own communities?
Yes, if it is helpful.
Thank you very much. A big hand for Father, everyone. I think you know by now how to physically clap or give a digital clap.
So thank you so much.
You-
Thank you so much for serving the Lord and His Holy Church. And we have much to do in the months ahead, and we go forward in faith, knowing that Christ is walking on the water beside us. God bless you and good night.
God
Father
bless you.
Nick, before
Good
you
night.
go, Father Nick, would like to say thank you very much. You are a real life superhero for us. And may the Lord grant
Amen.
you wisdom and knowledge, and really bless the project that you are doing for the Yeast Science project. Thank you very much. And I believe His Excellency and all the rest are saying, salamat po, maraming salamat po.
Just pray, please. Please pray for me and my students. Good night and God
Good
bless
night.
you.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
God
Salamat
bless
po.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.